So I have a question for all three of you, because you all mentioned, getting stakeholders involved. And I think it was Clara who talked about the flexibility in choosing those stakeholders. But how do you go about choosing who the stakeholders are, who's going to be a part? And what do you do, when you find out that some group, or sometimes it's an important individual even, who's missing? So could you each speak to that as your process for identifying stakeholders initially, and then how you go about fixing that?
Sure, I can go first. I was waiting for Clara and Gabriella to speak about.
I was doing the same for you.
It's okay.
Let's just go in order of speakers.
There you go. There you go. So I think in our project, we sort of start with a few, say, gatekeepers, or the few obvious important stakeholders who play an important role in the community, who are maybe known. For example, are there specific panchayat leaders, for example, or the specific farmers who are proactive, who've done certain things in the farm, starting there. But then for us, the iterative process of interviewing and building our coordination model was key in identifying who is missing here, what information we don't have, what's knowledge gap, why are some folks taking certain actions, are there folks who are taking a different action? I think that process of working through what would a planning process look like in this community, or what would the planning framework look like in this community, helped us identify who those missing stakeholders was, like what I explained to Andy earlier. But then to reach out to those key stakeholders, we had to identify, so as you're building the relationship with your community from kind of, I would not say from scratch, but from semi-scratch, because you have some key gatekeepers or key stakeholders you've already built a relationship with. You sort of, through the iterative process of interacting with them, you sort of build your network. And so as what happens is, when you identify, all right, they have a certain small group of, for example, in our case, it was the women farmers and then the day laborers. Like, for example, when those groups were missing, identifying, are there key folks in that group, in the earlier group, who could help us connect with an individual person in that other small group, connect with that person, talk with them, try to build a relationship with them, show them the value of the work they're doing, and ask them, what are the questions they have, sort of get the relationship going. And then that sort of helps, like, step one of building a relationship with the other people in that group, right? So it's an iterative process of getting into a group and then expanding your network, then getting to a new group, expanding your network. It's a step-by-step process. I don't know maybe there is a special approach in social science that could be termed as how do you build that network of stakeholders. But that's the process we used in terms of because we were trying to, very slowly but iteratively engage with the stakeholder community to identify and bring those missing key persons without rushing into, hey, this is the only group you're going to work with and that's it. And those folks, sometimes you identify them by chance too, like I said, where you suddenly meet them in a meeting. That could also be possible in a group where you suddenly find by chance, hey, this person is missing in our conversations. But having the coordination, the map was really, the modeling of the map template was really important to help us do it in a more strategic manner.
Okay, and Anna Marshall says that they call that snowballing.
Snowballing, yes.
Identifying
yes.
interlocutors.
I uses that word, yeah. So Jenna is our social scientist in our team. She uses that term a lot. So yeah, okay, there you go.
Okay. Claire, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think Meghna is so correct in that, like, there's usually kind of a very obvious initial group that you are like serving or interacting with. And for us, it was, the most prolific water data producers often is the academic, like the hydrologic academic community. So it's PIs who are funded through university grants at universities through the National Science Foundation. And this is actually, it's quite a hot button topic. And we have also a very talented social scientist at Kwasi named Kristen Robb, who would be able to speak quite eloquently to this, but unfortunately it's just me. But yeah, so we, identified like this academic community that had a clear need for a file agnostic general purpose data repository. And there was this kind of ongoing movement to like move toward, if your data collection is funded by taxpayers, your data should be available to taxpayers, things like that. And, trying to like engage with that culture shift in the academic world, but then kind of looking at our community and realizing like, it's kind of like you do, and people come to you and say like, what about my use case? And they're not in the academic community. They're, for example, citizen scientists, or they're local water managers who are also in need of the same kind of resources. And you say like, what are the boundaries of our like stakeholder community? And like, are we able to do this many things well? Or do we want to narrow our focus, right? Or is it more important to focus on one community's needs and like do that really well? Or, can we expand our stakeholder base to include these different use cases for people who need really similar functionality? Like, can we serve them well? And so it is kind of a snowballing of like, someone in the academic community is working with someone who's doing a citizen science project, and that project it's like, well, we could use we want to make our data available in the same capacity in a way that is persistent, findable, accessible, citable, and reusable. And so it is kind of like this snowballing effect of like the boundaries of our stakeholder community expanding and moving outward, and us trying to maintain the quality of the work that we do for all of those stakeholders.
Great. And Gabriela, you want to add?
Yes, how we developed the list, the people that we wanted to interview was in the steering team. It took us like maybe 3 months in each learning hub. And the steering team we have people, of course, from the university. We have our local partners. We invited farmers, agency staff, sorry. So we developed a list of maybe 50 people that we wanted to interview, and then we reduced that list to 35. And we went to do the interviews, and we start asking, should we interview now? And once we had these 20-something interviews done, we went back to the steering team and this is the people that we interview, who are we missing? And we went and do some extra interviews. Of course, it's difficult to reach to everybody. Some people didn't want to talk with us, and we acknowledge that. And we are trying to have a different approach to that kind of people, because you can't make a change if you don't have some key stakeholders involved in this process. So we know that this is happening, and we are trying to find different ways to involve these people.
Okay, great. Is there another question out there from someone? Andy?
Sure. Yeah, I had a question for Gabrielle. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering how much iteration you've been able to build in, and or you plan to build in the continuing part of your project with respect to stakeholder engagement. So, you showed a workshop. Have you had several of those workshops? Are you able to kind of take an initial bit of feedback, develop something with the team, and then go back and kind of iterate? I'm just curious what's happening there.
Yes, we plan. Well, we just had our last community gathering on March 21st. So the idea is, yes, once we have the feedback, go back, start working on this feedback that we receive, and go back again to the community. And okay, you wanted to focus on this. For example, we have in the Driftless Learning Hub, that is the Southwest Wisconsin. They want to focus on processing. So we have a team of Grassland 2.0 that is working on supply chain. So the idea, we have Grassland 2.0 has 8 different teams. So we plan to go back to the community, trying to help solving some of the issues that we identified in these community gatherings. And we have the resources to keep organizing community gatherings and bring people together to keep working together.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions?
If it's okay, I've got one for Clara.
Okay, go.
And thank you for your presentation. So I was just interested in developing or implementing the FAIR standards in HydroShare. Did you were there cases where you had to adapt or modify the way you had implemented the FAIR, one or more of the FAIR standards based on the user community input or needs or so forth? That makes sense.
Yeah, so there are times when, so they're the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. There are times when like people come to us with formats that are not interoperable, for example, and one of the ways, like for example, like MATLAB is not an open source coding language. But people often use MATLAB to process the results of hydrogeologic models. And so one of the ways that we actually try to make that accessible is we have a license with MATLAB to have a free instance of MATLAB online available for anyone with a HydroShare account for free. So kind of like people come to us and they're like, this data is not exactly fair, like it's in a format that is not necessarily accessible, or requires a software license or something like that, that is expensive. And usually what we try to do is look at, like if those use cases are recurring, like we have many people who come to us and say, I have this non-interoperable format, for example. We say like, we've gotten enough XYZ occurrences of this that we need to find a way for this data that it will be stored in our system to be accessible. And so, for example, this instance of MATLAB online, it's a cloud computing environment that people can use to open MATLAB scripts that are stored in HydroShare directly from the landing page that the data is stored in into an online instance of MATLAB online and run that code and get the outputs in interoperable formats. So I wouldn't say that we've had to like change our implementation of FAIR, but we have had to find ways to ensure that the data stored in our system, like we're trying to live by our values in like with FAIR data, and make sure that if people are coming to us with these use cases, we're looking at them and saying like, well, how can we make this fair? And that's kind of one of the ways that we have done it.
Well, that's great to hear that. That's a really interesting addition. And so thank you, Andy, for asking that question. I guess it's getting close to the end of this, or it is the end of this. And I need to thank you. I have more questions, but I don't have time. Another session tomorrow, same time, same place. So please join us. And thank you for the presenters. Those were all very interesting.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a
Thank
good day,
you.
guys.